when it comes to anything regarding UFOs, aliens, that type of thing, people who do legitimate research, or people who actually do legitimate investigations into the phenomenon, or people who have, allegedly experienced the phenomenon in some direct way, right? Being a witness or being an abductee or whatever you want to call it. The second you start dabbling in this world, you start to read more, you start to do more research, and it kind of takes over your brain. It's almost like quicksand. You start to slip into it and fall into it, and it consumes you.
You are now entering the legal sphere.
Hello, Internet friends. You've just stumbled upon the Memosphere, a podcast that explores the future of advertising by studying viral marketing movements, talking to smart people who actually know what they're doing, and analyzing memes and internet trends. My name is Andrew.
And today we're switching up our format a bit. Can you guess how?
That's Lucas. He will be joining me for the interview and the intro part, and I will be joining Lucas for the discussion afterwards. This way we're thinking we can talk a little bit more like normal humans and probably end up interrupting each other a bunch in the process too, like right now.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah, we will consistently try slightly different variations so we can find one that you all like the best. And then again, any feedback you have is appreciated. Believe it or not, we're actually people, or are we? So come talk to us, let us know what you think, because we will literally actually take your feedback and integrate it into our next podcast.
Yeah, totally. We need more friends. So we're your hosts from Meme Team Marketing. We're a digital marketing and media agency looking to make all forms of branded content less sucky. Our goal with this podcast is to help marketers and content creators understand why and how the digital medium works, so they can use it effectively and responsibly to connect with people online.
Oh yeah, and one more update before we start is that we are expanding. Meme Team is constantly looking for media makers, memers, and marketers to join our team. Our work is fully decentralized, so you can work wherever you are and whenever you have time. So if you're interested in joining the Meme Team, send us your info on our website or hit us up on any social media, and we'll jump on an interview with you. Literally, me or Andrew will give you a call and figure out what fits best.
Yeah, we'll just chat. It's pretty casual.
Yeah.
So today's main topic is aliens. Area 51 memes. Today we're talking about seeing them aliens. So Area 51 memes are hot, like very, very hot. They're clearly the biggest mainstream meme right now. It's on every platform. It's gone beyond Reddit. It's on everywhere. Facebook. It's on the news.
It's in conversations a lot too that I've noticed. My friends are talking about it. My family's talking about it. Pretty much everywhere you go, if you're ever in a group of like 5 people or more, someone's gonna undoubtedly mention it.
Yeah, I've even noticed with like Bitmoji and like Giphy keyboards, like there's a ton of new alien content out there that people are using.
Oh yeah,
it's getting popular now.
And of course, all the big, Instagram pages and meme pages have already jumped on it and are jumping on it. Like I think I just saw KFC today posted something a little bit late in my opinion, but
yeah, it's already past peak, honestly.
Definitely expected, which is something we'll talk about later. Like this has literally been one of the fastest, hottest memes I've seen. I mean, the event page started, I think, just about a month ago. And in less than a month, there's, 3 million responses on a Facebook page, which is like a prime example of how fast things can happen online.
Yeah, I think over 1.5 million say they're actually going.
Gnarly.
Then like another 1.5 million say they're interested. So we're thinking it's got to be the most robust meme trend since Harambe. Some people would say Harambe even triggered this in some sort of long chain reaction.
Oh, yeah.
But there's mass amounts of merch being sold by the people who created the events and other meme pages who are jumping on the bandwagon and trying to sell merch. Like we said, it's a national conversation. Recently, I guess it was like a week ago, Lil Nas X released a new music video with a remix for his song with like aliens in the music video. It was like animated.
It was literally just Old Town Road, but someone did a full animated storyline of like aliens and invading Area 51. And so I think that's pretty cool to see. I mean, there's like a significant amount of effort put into that. And I mean, he's a meme trend too. He's got some resources, so not too surprising. But that was definitely high effort.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Other big names have jumped in on the conversation. Of course, the meme lord himself, Elon Musk, has tweeted about it a few times, including a pledge to provide flamethrowers to anybody going. I think Keanu Reeves says he's going to be there. A bunch of other celebrities have Snapchatted or tweeted about it.
Oh man, sorry to interrupt again, but with all these like celebrities jumping in, I can never tell if it's real or not, and I never care to check either. Like I see a picture posted somewhere, and it's a Snapchat of Liam Hemsworth saying something related to Area 51. Did he send it? Probably not. Do I care to check if he actually did? No. So it's cool to see the effect is the same, like with fake tweets and fake Snapchats. Literally, majority of people aren't going to care to check, and so they think that it's coming from the actual person.
Yeah. So I mean, it doesn't really matter if
Let's
it's real
see more
or not.
fake tweets, fake snaps. I want more fake info.
That's the power of memes. Is fake information can look really real. So the Facebook event page was created by a religious organization, very devout religious people. The page is called Shitposting because I'm in shambles.
Same.
It's really conservative, I think. They've got some heavy doctrines and...
I mean, I'm pretty sure they're posting an update to the Bible later, right? I saw that on their page.
Their own version.
Yeah.
Anyway, the guy who, or maybe multiple guys, I think it's just one guy mainly, who started it, declined to comment when we messaged him. And we know from a couple articles that have come out that he's surprised by how the whole thing took off, and he's probably freaking out a little bit about the potential of what will happen and if there'll be any consequences for him.
Oh, I wonder. Yeah, because, I mean, I'm sure you've seen that the military is actually spending resources to prepare, like to debrief about this event, which is odd because, like, he said he made the event page as a joke, but now literally it's costing him in some small form tax dollars.
That's wild.
Yeah.
So the event is scheduled for September 20th, 2019. It's a little bit far away still. Got another month and a half or so to go. I mean, we already kind of touched on the fact that that's far away and it's already kind of peaked. Why he picked that date, I don't know. We were thinking he should have done September 21st. Earth, Wind, and Fire reference. Or just like as soon as possible.
Yeah. I mean, I thought if he was going to pick a date in September, it'd be 9/11. Just because, like, that is a meme topic in some occasions.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, I thought that would have been one, but no. And then also, I mean, like we mentioned, if the organizer was actually trying to make this as let's see, like as successful as possible, the event would happen, immediately because no one's going to care in 2 months. And the meme community recognizes this. I've seen a bunch of different posts talking about how, we have to revive the trend later in September, or the meme's too hot, it's not going to make it all the way there. They recognize that the life cycle is probably not going to make it.
Yeah, I mean, memes don't usually stay this popular that long. It will be kind of fun to watch because we'll get a very public view of the life cycle of a meme. And like he just mentioned, people are already aware that we're asking a lot for this to stay hot that long. So in the matter of 2 weeks, it went from 0 to 100. It exploded in popularity. Just on Google Trends, it was more popular in terms of searches than Jesus, Donald Trump, and Fortnite.
Yeah.
So those are the three big ones, There's nothing bigger than those three.
My mom would be pissed, especially at the Jesus one.
Yeah.
More popular than Jesus. Jesus spent 2,000 years gaining popularity only to be beat by a dumb meme in a matter of 2 weeks. It's interesting to think that if you think of each of these as brands, Jesus, Trump, or Fortnite, they put so much effort into gaining recognition, into gaining like search rank, and a meme was able to outrank them in 2 weeks. Which, if I was on any of these teams, well, I don't know if the church has a team for the internet.
Oh, they've
branding.
got a team.
but
You don't know about it.
Yeah,
But they're there.
I'd be pissed and really intrigued to see like how they can demand so much search attention.
So now that you guys get the gist of what's going on with this whole Area 51 thing, we want to dig into why this is happening. Why is this a thing at all? So to uncover the secrets behind the success of the Storm Area 51 movement, we've got a totally out of this world conversation with MJ Banias, author of The UFO People, A Curious Culture. His book tells the story of UFO witnesses and experiencers of the paranormal, and ties in interviews and research of some of the most famous and infamous names in the UFO subculture. He also just recently published an article through Vice called "The Storm Area 51 Event Has Turned into a Marketing Stunt," which is right up our alley, so we're really stoked to talk to him about kind of the marketing side of alien and UFO things in general. So his article basically digs into how the actual UFO community is skeptical about this whole thing and how they find the event misguided. But it also has a lot of great stuff about how people are just using this to sell merch. And we'll talk a little bit about why people have such a strange desire to buy alien-themed merch. So, really excited for this conversation. Let's do it. Hey MJ, welcome to the Memosphere. Thanks for coming on.
Oh, it's my pleasure to be here. Thanks very much.
So we're really stoked to get your opinion on the whole Storm Area 51 memes and learn a little bit more about UFO culture in general too, to kind of supplement people's knowledge about what's going on and how people are reacting to this thing. So the first thing we want to ask you is just kind of a general question. Why do you think this Storm Area 51, I should say, event got so popular? What about this joke made it different from other dumb internet jokes?
Yeah, it's really funny. It's such a great question because I'm not too sure. I think there's a few things. I think we've seen in recent months a huge surge of interest within the idea of UFOs. 2 years ago, you had a New York Times article that brought out the fact that the Pentagon was actively engaged and funding a UFO investigation sort of group at the cost of about $22 million of taxpayer money.
Oh, man, wow.
You then had, last year you had a lot of press surrounding the Navy, the U.S. Navy, and how it's now going to shift how it deals with reports from its pilots and reports from its crew concerning UFOs. So they're going to start reducing the stigma and make it okay for pilots to come forward if they spot sort of something anomalous in the sky. And ultimately for them, this is all about national security. And it's kind of been the same thing for the Pentagon too, right? What you don't want as a nation is you don't want things flying around your skies that no one can identify, that don't really show up on radar effectively. There's no transponders that, tell the radar operators, who this is. And obviously from the Pentagon's point of view, the Navy's point of view, they're thinking it's, Russia or China or some other foreign power. They're not necessarily going down the alien road. But we've had this big surge of UFO media as of late. Punk rocker Tom DeLonge has left Blink-182 and he became sort of a UFO guy and allocated significant funding into that project to the stars. So you have a lot of attention being brought to the UFO question. And what did it for the Storm Area 51 campaign was Joe Rogan recently had on a gentleman by the name of Bob Lazar, who was a sort of allegedly a guy who used to work at Area 51 working on flying saucers. And that hit Netflix as well. So the Joe Rogan podcast and then this documentary video about this guy on Netflix kind of has brought all of this to the forefront. And I think the creator of the Storm Area 51 meme just kind of hit it at the exact right time. And
yeah, absolutely.
There you go.
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. And even as you're talking about those things, I just remembered also there's been a lot of news about the idea of creating a space force too.
Right. Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Just another example of examples of things happening in the UFO and space community.
Definitely. I also like how you mentioned there's been like a destigmatization of the concept in recent terms. You mentioned how the pilots are now feeling more comfortable to come up and bring up these occurrences that are happening, because usually I feel like the connotations with the UFO community are like what you think or what you see on the History Channel. You see some dude with crazy hair who sounds kooky, who you kind of just dismiss. But now it's definitely entered into a more mainstream conversation, which I think is really changing the community as a whole, like the UFO conspiracy area community.
Sure. I mean, we also live in a time where you have no disrespect to the current, presidential administration, but you currently live in a country where conspiracy is a huge component of the discourse regarding politics. Yeah. The notion of fake news itself is such an interesting, it's an interesting meme in and of itself. But, you have a president who actively engages in almost conspiracy thinking and in conspiracy talk. So it's a sort of a natural transition, I think, for stuff like UFOs to become, a more allowable discourse to occur within mainstream context.
Oh, absolutely. That's a great transition for my next question, which is, how do you think social media has changed the nature of the UFO/conspiracy community?
Right. Well, I mean, social media is huge when you think about especially how people communicate now. The vast majority of it occurs over social media. I can speak to the UFO community. I'm not an expert on conspiracy culture.
Gotcha.
I dabble a little bit just because it often interlaps, right? You have these connections that flow between UFOs and conspiracies all the time, but I'm not a big expert. So, I can't speak too much on that. But within the UFO community, the vast majority of discourse occurs over social media. It occurs on Facebook and it occurs on Twitter. And you have people who do basically their entire sort of UFO research, all of their UFO sort of self exists in a purely social media state. So when you think about how people talk about UFOs within the community, it often all occurs on social media. And that's sort of unfortunate, I think, to a point, only because you can only say so much in 140 characters on Twitter. You can't necessarily engage in proper discussion or proper debate or proper discourse. And we all know what social media is like. It quickly devolves into insults and vitriol and name throwing and racist slurs. So it's kind of a catch-22, and it's kind of a double-edged sword. But social media is a huge component of the conversation.
Totally.
Yeah. Does that answer your question? Sorry.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I mean, my general interpretation is that it's enabled people who wouldn't necessarily otherwise talk about it, let's say at the dinner table, to engage in the conversation. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, UFO websites and UFO forums and all that stuff are kind of dark, seedy corners of the internet. The vast majority of them are these ancient sites that are like were built, in the 1990s of GeoCities. So, a lot of people who are interested in UFOs, especially the younger generation, don't go to these forums. They don't go to all of these forums that have been around for decades to start doing their research and looking at the UFO question. They start on Twitter. They start following individuals on Twitter who they sort of like, or podcasts or whatever, YouTube sort of researchers. And then that's how they kind of get into it. They then, follow other followers and it kind of becomes this conversation that exists. So it's not that I'm not saying it's bad necessarily, but it's kind of the gateway where things become problematic, especially for the UFO community. Is a lot of the people who've been in it for a long time really struggle with sort of all of these new kids who come in. We sometimes refer to them as young guns. All these young guns who come in and start sort of talking about stuff that's already kind of been well established or well researched or thoroughly debunked, but they kind of resell it as something new. And you're like, oh man, okay, so this photograph was like thoroughly debunked 10 years ago or whatever, right? And it becomes a bit of a problem because then we're kind of treading over the same old ground. So it's weird. It's like the UFO community is very split on sort of how social media ought to function within discourse. But Yeah,
Yeah.
it's interesting.
Definitely. So I think that brings up a good point, which is a question we have is at the end of the day, how many people do you think are going to show up to the event? And like it mentions the split community where you have the young guns and then the people who actually go and debunk these images. And I feel like a lot of the people responding to the Facebook page are young guns who aren't necessarily committed. They're just interested in the idea, as opposed to people who actually consistently engage and do research. So
Right. Yeah. The Storm Area 51 event is very much a sort of almost like a video game driven community, right? I mean, it was started by a video game Twitch, I guess, celebrity, let's say. Well, I use the term celebrity loosely, but a guy who's on Twitch and plays video games. And the vast majority of the memes, right, that have occurred as a result of this are based around concepts of anime and video games and that culture. So you're not necessarily dealing with a lot of the UFO community here. You're dealing with this sort of surge of others who are coming in. That being said, a lot of members of the UFO community have thrown in their lot. But to answer your question, we know currently kind of the surrounding area around Area 51. There's sort of several little townships. The main one's called Rachel, Nevada. They have a hotel there and whatever. I mean, it's totally booked out. The owners of the hotel, and there's a museum as well. It's like a Roswell museum, or an Area 51 museum kind of dedicated to aliens and that type of thing. It's all tchotchke crap, but they've basically bulldozed and flattened out huge sections of their properties. And we're dealing with, they're sitting on land that's just desert, but they own, a few, dozen acres each of just like desert land. So they've totally stripped it clean. And now they're basically setting up the ability for people to camp. So they're running electricity. They're running basically water. They're running like a septic sort of service, sewage service, so that people can bring their tents, bring their trailers, bring their campers, and basically camp out. Right now, I think the capacity that they can hold on this sort of strip of land in Rachel, Nevada is something like they could house like 30,000 people if they actually showed up. Yeah, it's crazy. And they're trying to get more. Like basically, they're going in and they're just renting land from all around, and they're basically trying to get literally empty desert rezoned so that they can turn it into a camp section. Because the creator of the event, Storm Area 51, has kind of said he wants to turn it into a bit of a sort of UFO Burning Man event. He wants to have like indie bands and EDM music and turn it into a big festival where, you can just party for several days. And it's going to sort of be a Storm Area 51, like I said, festival of like a folk festival or a Burning Man style festival. Yeah. So it's who knows what's going to happen.
Yeah,
definitely interesting. I guess I'm surprised I haven't seen tickets up for sale then, because you want to get some idea. Because I bring it up because you're getting people spending like resources to set up the campsites, and like we mentioned in the intro, the military is spending resources. It's like the investments are being put out there. So I'm really curious to see. If they can make this a thing.
Yeah, from what we understand, like it's about currently like this week is like they're right now getting all of the permission from the state to be able to basically hold a giant festival. Like it's kind of all occurring from what I understand this week, and next week we should have more details as to
very cool.
What's actually happening. But who knows who's going to be here? It's kind of a gamble, right? You could have 5 guys show up.
Yeah. Well, I think,
or 30,000.
Yeah. I mean, if they're able to set up, kind of a more official festival that has approval from the state and stuff, then a lot of the skeptical people might feel a little more comfortable showing up, knowing that there was some sort of approval for an event to happen in the space, at least.
Right.
So
literally a few kilometers from the gates of Area 51. Yeah.
Yeah, that's crazy. So we've been kind of talking about how people have been marketing this as an event. And so, which is kind of based on your article, you kind of dipped into the marketing side of this whole thing and how people are selling tons of merch now, including the event organizers and other meme pages, kind of trying to capitalize on this. And you talk a lot about the idea of people wanting to buy and own the UFO or the alien or the other. I was wondering if you could kind of elaborate on this idea and how it relates to Storm Area 51.
Sure. Ultimately, when it comes to anything regarding UFOs, aliens, that type of thing, people who do legitimate research or people who actually do legitimate investigations into the phenomenon, or people who have, allegedly experienced the phenomenon in some direct way, right? Being a witness or being an abductee or whatever you want to call it. The second you start dabbling in this world, you start to read more, you start to do more research, and it kind of takes over your brain. It almost like quicksand. You start to slip into it and fall into it, and it consumes you. And you begin to kind of look at the world a little differently. You start to realize, maybe my daily life isn't exactly, real or true. Maybe it's just like a version of reality that I'm currently living, but there's other things that I don't fully understand that are weird and scary and totally challenge my understanding of reality. And that's really what UFOs do. That's really what anything paranormal does. Paranormal discourse forces the user, whoever that is, in some way to question whether the reality they live in is sort of fundamental, or is it just a filtered version or an interpretation of reality? So what often happens is people who engage in UFO discourse kind of fall down this rabbit hole, and they start kind of becoming like their grip on like regular daily reality becomes a little looser, and they start to kind of dabble in weird new agey stuff, and they kind of go a little squirrely. I've had my one or two dark nights of the soul. But fortunately, I have a very stable family, so my wife and kids kind of drag me back to real life pretty quick, which is great. But the idea of owning something, right, from a consumer standpoint, provides comfort, right? A lot of philosophers have argued that the very act of consumption, capitalism itself hinges upon this notion of, if I can own it, I can master it, I have control over it. So it's not as scary anymore, right? If I have aliens on my phone case or aliens on my backpack, or if I have UFO lamps or whatever, the idea becomes less sort of objectively potent, and it becomes sort of something I can possess now, and I have sort of comfort in that possession. It becomes less frightening to me as something that's totally sort of anomalous and unknown. Yeah. So I think what's going on here is I don't think anyone's doing it sort of consciously. This all kind of happens subconsciously or unconsciously. But a lot of people undoubtedly have some cultural anxiety regarding the idea of Area 51. I mean, it's a very secretive base. No one really knows who works there. All of the buses and flights in and out are totally secretive. They're run by sort of a government contractor that has top secret clearance. To work there, you have to have top secret clearance. The place itself is shrouded in mystery, and there's a lot of mythology there about what goes on there. And it's really a big symbol of sort of American military might, American military secrecy. The best weapons are housed there, the best aircraft, the front, the frontline tech that sort of, the American national security state would use, is being tested at this Air Force base. So, I think there might be some anxiety. There might be this idea of, I don't know what my government's doing. It's all shrouded in mystery. Maybe there's some conspiracy culture happening here. So the idea of being able to kind of possess it, the idea of being able to kind of say, well, we're going to storm it and make a big joke and have a big party, and then buy a whole bunch of merch. This is kind of how I deal with my anxiety surrounding this place and this idea of the UFO or government secrecy or conspiracy. So I think that's kind of the idea that's happening. This is the prevalent kind of just natural human desire to just master the world around it.
Yeah. I think you make a lot of really good points there.
It's a real interesting thing about capitalism and later stage capitalism, where you can literally commodify anything, even commodify like the anxiety of potential government secrets is now being commodified. Like that kind of blows me away, that you can literally anything, even the idea of fear and distrust in the government who organizes the currency is being commodified. So,
well, yeah, I mean, you look at, you look at the big Cambridge Analytica scandal.
Yeah.
That company wasn't selling stuff, right? That company was selling just data, right? And not even actual data. Like they were just selling pure metadata, right? So that content could be created and targeted to certain, people that fit within the algorithm's interpretation of that metadata. So fundamentally, I mean, information and the idea of clicks and click through rates and all that stuff is huge business. I mean, there's literally nothing there to hold on to buy, but people pay fortunes for that in regards to sort of owning information about people, and not even information about people, owning the information about the information about the information about people, right? Which is really what metadata is.
Yeah.
So yeah, you have all of this kind of culminating at the same time. And it's funny, this Storm Area 51 response, like the idea of it is just simply, we're just going to amass a large group of people and just rush the base, right? Like that's where this sort of like the simplicity of the idea isn't about, trying to go through Congress to have stuff, demystified that way or doing stuff through proper channels.
Yeah.
If we have enough human beings, right? They can't shoot all of us.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly. And that's just like a massive wave of zombie horde, right? That was the basic notion. So it's almost like this kind of response to how we deal with national security and how we deal with cover-ups and secrecy. Sometimes you just need a bunch of people to start running at a gate. I don't know.
Yeah, I sense like a lot of underlying feeling of powerlessness from just like literally like all the other channels you would go through normally to get information are not realistic. And so like literally let's just get a massive group of people, like you said, to rush this fence, to jump the gate.
Right. And that's, fundamentally how the vast majority of revolutions occur. Right.
Yeah.
I mean, you go through history, right? Usually revolution doesn't come by going through proper channels, right? You don't petition, you don't, you don't, ask the people in charge to change things because the people in charge have a vested interest in keeping it, as the status quo. You literally every single revolution is just a bunch of people tearing down a gate and then unfortunately killing a whole bunch of people inside the gate. But, it's, it's just human history repeating itself. Now, obviously no one should go rush into Area 51. I'm not condoning that type of behavior. Don't be insane.
Of course not.
But yeah.
So who do you think are the winners and losers of this whole thing? Who's going to come out as getting some sort of positivity or some sort of traction from this whole thing? Is it going to make the government look bad in some way when it's all said and done?
No, I think the government will be fine. I think fundamentally this is going to be, the kid who created this, the young man who created the Storm Area 51 campaign. I'm sure he is going to do quite well for himself. This is something that at some point will generate some revenue for him. However he chooses to capitalize on this, he already has a t-shirt sort of website up where he's selling t-shirts. Even if 1% of 3 million people buy a t-shirt, that's still pretty decent cash. But obviously his Facebook stuff, his Twitch account, all that's, all of that social media presence, his brand, right, of him will grow. You already have some others capitalizing. I know a filmmaker, the same gentleman who did the Bob Lazar documentary that's currently on Netflix. He's creating a Storm Area 51 documentary. So whatever that's going to look like, we won't know. But, he's obviously going to capitalize on this. You're going to have a few clever, obviously all the people in racial Nevada, all of the people who kind of sell the alien stuff, all the various kind of UFO media personalities, most likely they're going to somehow get involved and cash in here because it's going to be a big money maker for them. So, you're going to have some economic benefit to the communities in Nevada that are close to Area 51. Again, though, it's probably just going to end up being a giant party. So whoever sponsors the party, right? Whoever, I'm sure Bud Light will probably sponsor something.
Did you see they actually put out an Area 51? Themed beer.
A Bud Light beer. Yeah. So, I'm sure it's just going to become another UFO style festival.
Yeah.
Which is fine. Like I have no problem with that. But we can't pretend that this is I don't think we should pretend that it's some act of rebellion or some act of dissent against the state, because it isn't, right? It was a joke that got out of hand, and not out of hand. I mean, good for him. It went viral. Good for him. But it's now going to become a giant party. which again, Area 51 and the American military will be totally fine with. You know what I mean? I'm sure they will have some fun. I'm sure they'll have jets fly over during the party or whatever, just to give them a nod, right? Because ultimately, this kind of serves their purpose. No one's actually rushing the gate. There is no revolution. People are just having a big party. So I think, I'm sure Area 51 and the staff there and all of the government security forces or whatever will be perfectly content with a giant party happening. They'll probably attend.
Oh, definitely.
I hope so.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I guess from our side, we're always interested in looking into viral marketing trends. And so next question is, because initially when I saw this, I was skeptical. I was like, is this an attempt at like a marketing scheme? And so I'm wondering if you think it's possible for people to replicate this kind of event with any kind of like similarity and exposure intentionally. And if so, like how do you think they would go about doing it?
Yeah, that's risky. There's tons and tons, especially in regards to UFOs. There's tons of UFO themed events that start and fail miserably within the first year. And I think it's because, the vast majority of people within the UFO community are kind of loyal to the things that they attend, and then that's it. Okay. And anything new is kind of dangerous unless it's the person who's starting it or the group that's starting it has some street cred within the community, right? So the UFO community is very much a subculture. And like any subculture, you have to have some cash within the subculture before you can, do something novel or new. So within UFO circles, I'm not sure, if anyone else is going to be able to kind of replicate this situation. Yeah. I think UFO culture is kind of weird that way. And I think that just the current era, like the current couple years we're living in, ufologically speaking, it just kind of was a perfect storm. I mean, when the young man who created this, he had no idea, like it was a joke, and it went, it was about a week. And then the thing just took off, right? It went from something like, he had something like 500 people after the first day, and then within a week it jumped up to 50,000. Yeah. And then it was like after it hit 50,000, it was something like every day it was going up by hundreds of thousands of people, to the point where now it's at like a little over 3 million, I think, or close to 3 million, something to that effect. So like to replicate this would be really tough, because I just wouldn't know what you would need. You would need a military base or something secretive that you could storm. It has the anime kind of video game Naruto silliness going on with it. And it has the UFO stuff. Like it's totally this oddball mix. And I'm wondering if it's because it wasn't. I'm wondering if it's because it wasn't planned and it was just a joke that took off. That maybe is why it's successful, right? It's pretty authentic. It's pretty. This wasn't designed to be a marketing thing. It wasn't designed to be a big media thing. It was just like literally a stupid joke, but it went crazy. Yeah. So I think I don't know, man. Yeah. Go ahead.
You're definitely saying a lot of right things. What I think it is a part like the perfect storm. You mentioned there's like building sentiment in the community in the current conversations just about like distrusting government, anything UFO related. Stranger Things was season 3 was put out recently, right. And that's kind of like the sentiment around UFO and anything government related involved. Also, you mentioned authenticity. I do think like it was just made to be a joke. But then also I think there's like pre-established information that everyone is already aware of. And so you have that to latch onto. So you have like Area 51, which everyone's familiar with. And then you have like the perfect storm timing of all like the sentiment in the general community conversations, and tie that in with some authenticity. And, this shit post versus the other thousands and thousands of shit posts gets picked up for maybe those bunch of reasons.
Right. And I'm not a marketing expert, but I mean, you guys might be able to kind of address this, but it seems that things that are unplanned usually are what go viral. It's very difficult to make something go viral, and you like your intention is to make it go viral. Like, is that true? So like any ad campaign, it has to almost sort of be authentic, and it can't be designed to go viral because people can sniff that out, right? Like people can sniff out if it's fake fairly quickly. Like we're very good at naturally figuring out things that are authentic and things that aren't authentic. So maybe that's the perk here. Like maybe that's what made this successful, was the fact that this was never designed to be to be anything apart from a joke, right? And you know, it just naturally paid off. I don't know. It's like I said, I'm not a marketing guy, but it's definitely worked.
Yeah, to say the least. Yeah. All right, so probably gonna wrap up this conversation soon. And one of the questions we usually close with is how you think the future of digital marketing is going to look like. But for this question, for you specifically, I'm going to take it a little bit differently for two reasons. One, because I saw you also write about the philosophy of the mind in some cases. And two, because just this week, the Neuralink, I'm not sure if you're familiar, but it's one of Elon Musk's other companies, and their goal is to link your brain to the internet. That announcement was pushed out this week. And so I'm curious, because this is something I think about, what you think digital marketing will look like in that environment when you're communicating. And this is a quote from the presentation, was when you're communicating telepathically in a meme-like structure. And so take that however you see it.
Wow. Yeah. This is really interesting. I mean, I can speak to sort of the UFO narrative maybe here a little bit, which kind of links in a way. Within a lot of UFO stories, you have allegations, and you have stories is the best way to word it, of people making or having sort of telepathic communication with something non-human. Right. So the idea that, your mind is being read, and then it sort of communicates back with you in some way via mind reading. Whether this is true or not objectively, I don't know. I've never been abducted or seen a UFO or anything, but it occurs in the stories a lot. Not yet. Now that I've said it, watch this. But the interesting thing is, when you think about philosophy of mind, you're interacting with something that isn't human, or at least, let's assume it's true. Just for the sake of argument, let's assume these stories are true. You're interacting with something that isn't human, yet it's able to communicate with you in a way that makes sense. And this would be very interesting. I mean, you're dealing with potentially an intelligence that's superior. You're dealing with an intelligence that knows significantly more about the universe than you do, and about reality than you do. So how does data from an incredibly complex structure get simplified to be able to communicate with you and me in a way that makes sense to us? Right. And this is often sort of talked about within UFO discourse, at least sort of more potentially sort of educated in people who engage within the discourse. When you think about Neuralink, for example, you have a system that's going to link the human brain to an infinitely more robust and an infinitely more complex system. Not that the brain's not complex, but the internet has so much data, and you're dealing with so many bits of data that will be pushed through the system into your brain. The fact that it doesn't drive you mad would be, it was going to be quite compelling on how he works that out. Yeah. But again, in the same thing with UFO stories, people are engaging with creatures or beings or intelligences. And somehow that intelligence is being filtered down and pared down so that it makes sense to me. And it often functions within a language I understand, or it functions within emotions I understand. Again, within, UFO narratives, to assume that aliens have human emotions is silly, or to assume that an alien understands what fear is or what anxiety is. We don't know that, right? That's a very human emotion or very human concept. Whatever another intelligence would understand or feel or experience, if it can even do that, wouldn't be human in any way. So the idea of digital marketing then is fundamentally, these aliens, these intelligences, in the stories are literally tweaking an authentic, raw, objective message and structuring it, marketing it in such a way that I can understand it, so it makes sense to me, so I know not to be afraid when they telepathically tell me to not be afraid. And moreover, when I communicate outwards back, when I say, no, go to hell, I am afraid. What the hell are you doing with that giant syringe? Get off me, you little son of a bitch. Can I swear on this show? Yeah. Sorry. I just swore on your show.
Oh, you're totally fine.
Okay, great. When that happens, then all of that data then needs to get filtered so that thing understands that, oh, okay, you're still nervous. Well, let's put on some classical music to calm you down. You know what I mean? So fundamentally, it seems to be all about the medium and the message and how the marketing of messages occurs between two intelligences, myself and whatever the intelligence I'm communicating with. So this is gonna be interesting because, David Bowie himself said that the internet is an alien life form.
Yeah.
The internet is this, I'm not saying it's intelligent in some objective sense, but it is this complex brain system that goes well beyond our understanding. Because often there's so much data and metadata that you have to deal with that the human mind can't necessarily process it. So it'll be interesting, like from a marketing standpoint, how that would work in the future, because it's now going to have to deal with stuff like emotion. It's going to have to deal with stuff like context. Like, what if I'm having a really bad day? Don't market to me poorly, right? Because then I'm just going to turn you off. You know what I mean? Like, I'm having a really crappy day. So the thing needs to understand I'm having a crappy day. And, my emotions are in one place. And then suddenly like a McDonald's ad pops up into my brain. I'm going to be like, well, block, right? Or whatever. So I never see a McDonald's ad again. And then suddenly it's worked the opposite. So, there's a lot of context here. Same thing with aliens abducting people. They tend to abduct people when they're in certain states of mind, in certain states of rest or sleep or in awareness or whatever. It has to kind of be done and managed properly. I suppose that communication has to be managed properly. So when it comes to digital marketing in the 21st century, you're gonna have to deal with a lot more complicated 21st century and like maybe the 22nd century. I don't know. You have to deal with some pretty complicated aspects, especially if you're hardlined into like the internet via the brain. Like what if you just like break up with your boyfriend or girlfriend? And then like you're walking down the street and then you get this like ad for like Victoria's Secret. Like that would really make you mad.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think whatever form it takes, it's going to be a wild ride with a lot of bumps along the way. Because if it's anything like digital marketing is right now, we're going to need some form of ad block, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, ultimately, if it's in your brain, like, can they influence emotions then? So instead of just, using an advertisement in a traditional sense, could they just simply influence the physiology of your brain or the neurons firing in your brain to then like, so I'm walking down the street and then suddenly I have a desire for McDonald's or whatever, because that system, that machine just tweaked a few neurons to fire in a certain direction. And now I really want French fries.
Yeah.
Right.
Super interesting.
You're right.
Yeah. Cause
so the mind control, right?
Yeah. I mean, pretty much. Did you intentionally make a McLuhan reference earlier for medium is a message?
I did.
Okay. Cause I bring that up because it's definitely related, because I'm a fan of his writings, and in one of his books, he mentions how the goal of advertising is ultimately to have fluid. It's fully fluid purchases in advertising, and so there's no thinking process. You're fully fluid in your decision making process. There's no hesitation. You just like streamline through everything that you need throughout your day, which, like you mentioned, is like you could just be influenced. Like there's no questioning if you want this product. It's just, here's this influence and here it is next to you. And so I did also notice in the presentation, they mentioned that the electrodes that are implanted in your brain are both read and write, which implies that the right function would be to influence the like electroactivity in your brain. I have no idea. I don't know enough about the brain to know if that's actually possible or not, but just including it in the presentation makes me think that there is definitely the goal of both reading and writing. Ooh.
Right. Yeah. I've only done a bit of like, I've read one article about this, and I'm not sure like how successful, like, are people going to want to have this implanted in their brain so that just because they have internet connectivity inside their skull all the time, the problem is you can't just put it down. If I want to walk away, I can, right? I can lay my phone down, or I can turn my TV off or my laptop off, and then suddenly, I can be alone. Whereas in this regard, this is sort of always attached to me.
That's a good point.
This reminds me of like Star Trek, right? Where, and it's funny you mentioned Marshall McLuhan, because, in Star Trek, it's sort of similar in the sense that if you want something, you just simply go to a machine and it creates it for you. The one difference is that you don't pay for it, right? Within sort of the Star Trek world, the Earth has moved beyond, money and capitalism, and it's moved beyond a culture of consumption. And now you just simply have access to everything. So if, people no longer really live in this constant desire to want things because they can have anything they want, and it costs nothing, and you just simply go do it if you want it. If I need a new shirt, I just tell the thing I need a new shirt, and there's my new shirt. So it's interesting, right? Because we have this kind of weird future where it almost becomes like dystopian, like Blade Runner-esque, right? Where everything is marketed, everything is still run by corporations. And now not only that, the corporations are literally plugged into your skull and can mine your brain for data to market to you, and potentially influence your buying decisions directly through your mind, versus, a future where that doesn't happen. If I want to step away from technology, I just simply put the tricorder down and walk away. You know what I mean? It's an interesting sort of duality that exists within like what the future of humanity is going to look like. Because I think a lot of people really want kind of the Star Trek future, right? But the problem is, no corporation is just going to freely give away technology that will allow you to do whatever you want and make whatever you want, right? This was, it's interesting. It's such a, the future freaks me out, man.
I know. I don't try to think about it too much because, especially right now, I feel like the variables are there's so many to keep track of, and the potential for change is, there's too many moving parts, and so I think most of all, it's just important to have conversations about it. So
Agreed. Yeah. And the perk to the Star Trek futures is humans were given that technology by the Vulcans, right? So ultimately it took an alien to show up to deliver that, basically no one needs to want anymore. Here's a machine that will replicate all things for anyone who needs it. You've just cured poverty, starvation. You fixed every single global problem, in regards to resources. And it wasn't humans and a corporation or a government that created that. It was, the ultimate symbol of technological salvation, the alien, right? Coming down and being like, here's the technology, and a condition of you having this is everyone gets it. No one owns it. It's free tech for everyone. It's interesting, is that something our governments would allow? That's another big question, right? Or corporations, would our corporations and lobby groups allow something like that to occur? If suddenly aliens showed up and said, here's a device, we're going to distribute these all over the place to every country, would that quickly get shut down? It's interesting to think about.
Maybe we already have it and it's hiding in Area 51.
Nice.
51. Well done. Bring us back.
Brought it back. Got to wrap. That was super cool. We ask everybody kind of that question about the future, and nobody's really gone into the scope that you just did. And it was cool to hear a different perspective. So really appreciate your input there. That was awesome.
Oh, thanks very much.
All right. That's about all I got. I'm curious if you have any questions for us before we head out here.
No, this was really cool. I'm excited to hear the podcast. I'm going to check out some of your stuff because it's like a meme marketing company. This is kind of neat.
Yep. And I'm excited for you to check it out. Let us know what you think. We're always looking for feedback. We love talking to people. Definitely appreciate that.
Yeah, no, this is so is this a brand new thing or?
We're pretty new. This is for anyone listening not in 2019. It's 2019 right now. And we started at the very beginning of this year. And the goal is to decentralize content creation. So ultimately it feels more authentic, and we feel like the meme community represents the epitome of content created for the sake of content and not with advertising. And so we're trying to facilitate a process where advertising feels less shitty, because on the internet, most advertising is just TV or print being repurposed. And so we want to connect creators who like making content and get them paid to make content that people would enjoy, for brands who ultimately have to get their message out, because at the end of the day, you're always going to have some form of marketing communications from the corporate side. So that's the goal. We're trying to find a fit.
That was cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Thanks, man.
All right. Well, we will send you this podcast once it's all wrapped up, and hopefully maybe we'll talk again soon sometime.
Yeah, that'll be sweet. Keep in touch.
All right. Have a good one.
All right. right, so you've made it to the last section of the podcast. And if you've listened to our podcast before, you know this is the part where we talk about the important points in the interview, kind of wrap it up with a nice bow, and send you off back into the memosphere. So I had a real good conversation with MJ. I really appreciate when we can talk about, at the end, like we mentioned, connecting the brain to the internet, because I don't get to talk about that very much. And I think it was cool how he wrapped it back into Area 51 and into telepathy and into general digital marketing. That being said, we're going to try to hone it back in and reinforce the points that I think were most important. And if you forgot, this time around, Andrew's going to be joining me to talk about commentary, so I can, actually have a conversation instead of just talk at a microphone, say something.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Yeah. So most of what I would normally say at the end here was mentioned in the interview. I really think the interview did a good job of presenting all the points that I would have wanted to make. One thing that was briefly mentioned was the connection to Stranger Things, which is what we think is pretty significant about this event. And like we mentioned previously before, is that this was the perfect storm of sentiment just in the memosphere. There was, just in general, everyone knows Area 51. There's a lot of distrust in the government, which is why they would want to go storm and find out secrets. And then also, Stranger Things is a media giant in its own right, and it carries a ton of weight. And so that creates a lot of sentiment around the ideas of invading government property, finding out secrets, interacting with otherworldly beings. And so my hypothesis is that the Stranger Things created this sentiment in the mass community, and because of the digital medium, people want to be ever more connected with their media. And so they were looking for an outlet to feel like they were participating with this sentiment, with this idea of going to government properties and interact with otherworldly beings. Because at the end of the day, you kind of wish your life was like a TV show. And so you want your life to be a little more like Stranger Things. And so what you do then is you go click going on the event page, and it makes you feel ever so slightly more like you're actually participating in the media that you love and enjoy so much.
Totally. And just in case you're curious, the timing of it was uncanny.
Yeah.
The event was created late June, I think June 28th, I believe. And season 3 of Stranger Things was released on July 4th. So within the same week, we have these two things, correlating and coinciding.
Yeah, and I think, like MJ mentioned, the timing paired with some feelings of authenticity is really what made it happen. Because had the event been sponsored initially, it would have died. And so I think that's a good point. Let's see. So why do we care about all this? What's the point of it all? And so I think it's real interesting to see the kind of impact that the digital community, the meme community, is having on like the physical community now, because it's usually dismissed as someone who is not important, not powerful in any sense, but literally now this single person who made an event page, probably a total of 3 minutes of effort went into making the event page, has thus triggered responses from the government, who's now spending resources to prepare for the potential event, and from businesses in the area who are now expending resources to prepare for potential visitors to the event. And so what started as a joke, what started as 3 minutes of effort on a Facebook page, is now soliciting actual resources and spending by government and corporate entities, which I think really shows the power of the digital crowd, the digital community. I think that this is a trend that's going to keep growing and that we'll see more of in the future. And so let's see. I think here it'd be interesting to mention I remember reading a while back a book about crowd psychology, and what I'm reminded about initially is that there's 3 primary ways in which an individual changes when they interact with the crowd. And this applies for physical crowds as well as digital crowds, because when you interact with a crowd online, you're not making decisions in the same way as you would if you were a single person. And so the main 3 ways people change when they interact with any kind of crowd is, 1, they are overcome with the sentiment of invincible power, which results in a reversion to instinctual behavior. So what that's trying to say is that you have a larger sense of pride and confidence in yourself because you feel like as a group you can achieve more. And this is represented in the fact that they can't stop us all. We're going to all storm the fences in the government facility. And if we're a big group, there's no way they can defeat us all, which realistically is it's not safe because they absolutely could defend their property if they would like to. And so regardless of your feelings of invincible power, not safe. And like we mentioned before, we fully do not condone actually breaking into any government facilities because you will absolutely be detained. And the second way people change is you're influenced by suggestibility, which enables the individual to more easily submit or dismiss their own conscious will. So when you amass a large amounts of people, you become more open to acting as the crowd appears to be acting. And so you're less likely to stand up for what you think might not be great and instead just like go along with the flow. And so there's numerous examples in my personal life, which I'm reminded of. One is that I went to school in Berkeley, and I was there when they had the Milo riots. And so I was actually walking from class to class watching, and I walked through the riot area while it was happening. And I saw one of my good friends in the riot. And as I was passing, I saw him with another friend, and the friend he was with started getting spray painted on. Someone who was in the area started spray painting my friend, and my friend, who's normally a timid person, joined in with a crowd of people around him to stop the dude from spray painting my friend. And so it's interesting to see in my personal life, literally your behavior will change when you're surrounded by a bunch of people who are all stoked, who all have a ton of energy. You will act more so you'll be more suggestible to what you think the group is doing, to what you think is right, as opposed to doing it on your own. Because if he was by himself, more than likely, would have brushed it off.
Yeah, it seems almost more like people are acting animalistic and more instinctual, just based off reactionary, I should say, and not using their normal conscious process to think things through. Yeah,
I mean, also there's very tangible examples not many people would dance alone as opposed to dance in a group at a party. Or I feel that way. I know some people love to dance alone or whatnot, but I definitely feel less pressure to dance when I'm in a large group of people, like a concert.
Well, yeah, you should just remember that next time you should be the first one to dance. You'll help other people dance.
That's a funny idea. Middle school dances. No one's the first, but
there's a really funny YouTube video of a music festival in Canada where this kind of nerdy looking overweight guy is dancing by himself on a hill, and people are videotaping him as a joke, and because he looks kind of silly, but then just slowly one by one more people join him until there's a crowd of 100 people just mobbing, and it's pretty awesome.
Yeah, and that makes a good point of the exponential growth in this kind of activity, in crowd activity, which is that once the single person, the catalyst, makes it happen, people start joining in more and more, and then eventually you have an exponential growth like you see with this event page, because everyone's bringing their friends, and then literally it's just a mass of people. So cool to see that one person was the catalyst. And finally, the third thing that makes a person different when they act in crowds is that they are persuaded by contagion, such that the individual adopts the perceived collective will, which we already previously mentioned. Excuse me, which is that you're more susceptible to act as you think the crowd would act. And I think it's important to consider the distinction of what you think is the proper response as to what you think the collective proper response could potentially be. And so when you're in a crowd, you start acting as if how you think the whole should act, as opposed to how you would act individually. And so you're more willing to do moralistic activity because you're making decisions based off of how you think the collective will is going to act. Anyway, I bring this up because I think that it's important to recognize that even though these concepts were mentioned in the context of a physical crowd and how physical crowds respond in the form of revolution, they also represent the digital community. And even more so in the digital community because it's easier to coalesce in the crowds. It's easier to find a crowd because you don't have to be anywhere physical. And it's much easier to submit your own will and adopt the collective will because you're interacting in what looks like a massive group of 3 million people. And so, I'm sure if you go look at the event page, you'll see a lot of examples of this kind of activity. One I saw right now is that there's people posting stuff yo, so who's actually going, who's trying to get there? and like they're looking for reinforcement from this collective group, because if it was them by themselves, absolutely would not go. But if the group as a whole starts coalescing into one entity, then they might act differently than they would as an individual.
Yeah, and it seems to me like the digital space and social media kind of also gives a certain sense of safety. Like it takes away the risk of being physically involved at first. You can kind of, I mean, it's not really true because obviously your data is being tracked all over the place. Haha. But you feel like a sense of like you're anonymous to an extent. You feel like you're safe because you're in your home, on your computer, on your couch. So like to be able to take those first few steps of just saying you're going and posting something and tweeting something or whatever feels a lot more safe, I feel like.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's funny that you mentioned that, because it's a precursor to our next podcast, which is going to be the review of that book, The New Digital Age.
Yeah.
And it talks about like a primary factor in the future of revolutions will be, can you actually get people from their couches to the streets? And there's some pretty cool examples of, I'll mention it very quickly because it's relevant. I forget where, but sometime in Egypt, they were expecting potential riots. And so what they did was they turned the internet off because they didn't want people to conversate, communicate with each other, because they expected it to further like dampen the riot. And it actually worked in counter because people did not have the internet as a means to go communicate with each other. So they actually went outside and communicated with each other in physical, which was much worse for the government. And so it's interesting to think that it mitigates that potential.
Yeah.
Anyway, I think it's super interesting to notice the kind of mob mentality that happens when the digital community connects with each other in this large scale.
Yeah, so little precursor for next episode, hopefully. And obviously we're trying out new formats, as we mentioned at the beginning. Let us know if you enjoyed hearing both of us talk and have a conversation. And I think the next one will be the same kind of thing. We'll kind of be talking about this book that we just read and kind of giving our thoughts and saying how it applies to digital marketing and meme community, meme internet space, all that good stuff. So thanks for listening. It's been fun.
Yeah, let us know if you have any other ideas for content you think we should make at all relevant to what we're doing. Like Andrew mentioned, we're going to start doing book reviews because we like to read and we like to stay updated on any of the new information in this area. And so we're always open to new info. Like we mentioned before, if you're a person and you want to be a person with us, find us anywhere on social media. I guess this is Aiden's part now that...
Yeah, we're kind of ripping him off.
Yeah.
We can say it twice, maybe.
Yeah, Aiden can say it again.
You can say it again and it'll be really drilled into their brain.
Let's just spell the memosphere over and over again for like the next 30 minutes.
We could fade out on it.
Okay, all right.
At
Yeah.
THE
underscore sometimes.
Most of the time.
Most of the time. Yeah.
MEMEOS
PHERE. Yeah. My Google still autocorrects to the mesosphere, which
all
is
the time.
All the time, which is, now that I'm thinking about it in retrospect, that might be tough for SEO. But, also I like the memosphere as a word, so sticking with it.
And you're getting an inside look at how everything works here at Meme Team Marketing.
I wonder
So
if Aiden's going to include this part.
we could always cut it off.
That's true.
We'll leave it in.
Yeah.
If you made it this far, you're probably a close friend. Send me a text.
Yeah, I mean, we could probably at this point list our socials without it really being a problem.
Yeah. So yeah, Reddit, Instagram, Facebook. We're
Find us.
on the things. We've got YouTube videos. Look us up on YouTube.
How about this? If you made it this far, send us a message and we'll send you a sticker in the mail.
Oh yeah.
We got stickers.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Yeah.
We have a ton of stickers. If you message us and you heard this part, we will send you a free sticker.
Slap it.
And you could slap it somewhere.
Yeah.
And,
Slap it on your mom, on your dog, on your computer. Probably not on your mom, but
Yeah. Maybe. I don't know.
definitely on your cat. All right.
Animals
Let's
are
go
good.
now. Yeah.
Okay. Bye.